Pressing or hunting? There was a really interesting question posed by False Pivot on Twitter X yesterday. And basically the question was, how do you coach pressing? And just, kind of led to that idea of, what is pressing? Pressing is an action, I think, a player action or a sub-principle, or you can even look at it as a broad principle that is initially, focused on putting the opponent into distress in order to regain possession of the ball, force a turnover. But really, pressing is a piece of a larger idea, which, I think of as hunting. If you follow Paul McGinnis on his social media, you'll see he does a lot with this idea of, this holistic idea of hunting. When we think principles, we think, creating shape in order to, be compact so that we can then initiate pressure on the ball in order to deny the opponent going forward, in order to ultimately win the ball. That sounds great as an idea, but conceptually, if we focus on for player actions and player mentality of hunting, I think that puts us in a space where pressing becomes a piece of a larger idea that can translate more successfully for player outcomes. When we think hunting, ultimately what are we trying to do? Obviously, yes, we're trying to deny the opponent moving forward, trying to make it difficult so that we can regain the ball. But really, we are ultimately trying to put the opponent into a situation where they feel comfortable and predictable. So we have to deceive and manipulate our quote unquote prey, our opponent, towards areas or towards situations where we can trap and regain the ball. If we think hunting, we want to make the opponent feel good so that they feel comfortable, so that they can play into our trap. What often happens is, again, that, how we make it predictable, we want to think about like what in the field is going to actually do that. We look at this kind of situation. This is a 7v7 setup, and I'm going to use that as a basis just to I think most people are familiar with this idea. In 7v7, yellow attacking south, blue attacking north, usually when we have this build-out line right here, all the players on the opposition must be behind this build-out line. And what you see a lot is, the goalie will have the ball and they make a first pass out here. At least in the United States, you can't play a long ball initially. In 7v7, the ball has to be played short. Well, typically that's what most players do. You can't punt, I should say. But what ends up happening is that first pass is played and this first press comes and immediately they try to put pressure. Now, of course, the pressure, ideally, can they regain the ball? Can they win the ball? Or at least can they force the opponent into a mistake? Now, that is fantastic. But if we are thinking, what is that first press designed to do? The first press is designed, yes, to put pressure, but also it's important for that first press to make the play for the teammates of the first press predictable. If this person presses in such a way which they are running directly at the opponent right into this space, and the player with the ball has the ball here, there is a 50-50 chance that the player could cut in or they could go out. When there is a 50-50 situation, it doesn't tell these players a whole lot about where they're going to go. When we want to make things predictable for ourselves as defenders, if we want to manipulate the prey into playing into our hands, how can we make it predictable? So when we talk about first press, the first press, really they are communicating to their teammates where we are trying to trap. Where are we going to try to crash? So if this player, rather than making a fast beeline into this direction, once the player receives the ball, if this player can maybe arc their run or try to encourage this player towards a specific space, this will then key in and alert the teammates of this first press where the crash is going to come. So if we think first press, where are we seeing that first press moving the ball towards? Where can we predict it's going to go? Well, now we have a very clear situation where this player has limited their options and their predictable options for us. So when this player shifts in, and again, that big principle of being compact, but where do we want the ball to go? More than often than not, this player is going to look for the easiest pass possible, which is right here. Now, this outside space, especially in the United States, and most teams you see this, you'll hear on the sidelines, you hear coaches yell, "Don't play to the middle, go wide, go wide." So there's already a tendency for players to want to play to these spaces, which makes it even more easy for this area to be the point of trap. Now, when this ball is played into this space, immediately there are so few options for this player to play out. You have the touchline as your extra defender, and you have a 1v2 or 1v3 situation where they can immediately crash. So if our first press, and again, not as fast as possible or as hard as possible, but as inviting as possible, we want to, again, make the prey feel like they are feeling good about where the ball is going to go, so that when that first press occurs and we're forcing them or pushing them or inviting them into spaces that we like, we don't have to talk about it. We just know where is it likely going to go, so that we can crash into the space. Now that is kind of an idealized demonstration of what that could look like. But generally speaking, how would I coach this? When we think about the areas of the field where we're more likely to find success, can we incentivize those for players? So, a game that I play, Snare in the Web, and it is basically a game that you can play in any kind of small-sided activity. You just divide the field into maybe quadrants, or you divide it into thirds, or you divide it into whatever kinds of areas where you can visualize that specific space for players. And then I'm going to tell the team defending, your job, if we have A, B, C, D, if we divide the field into quadrants, your job is, can you trap the opposition in quadrant A? Can you trap the opposition in quadrant B? Now, I'm not going to tell the team in yellow this. On the contrary, if they know where the trap is coming, we can't deceive them. So we don't want them to know where the trap is coming. But can we invite them into certain spaces, so that if we're trying to trap them into quadrant B, maybe instead of this first press marshalling the player out wide, maybe this first press is going to have to marshal them back towards the middle, back towards where the invited opportunity to play the pass is going to be. And once this pass is played, this is going to alter the structure of how they're going to adjust. But the idea is they're going to have to know, how can we make it predictable? So maybe this person then becomes the first press, inviting them into the space where we can trap in quadrant B. But generally speaking, rather than very, very if then, it's more about, how can we again think about these principles? Are we pressing or are we hunting? How do we hunt? We want to deceive or manipulate the prey. We want to invite them into areas where we can trap them and win the ball. And so how? We make it predictable. Where's the first press going? Where are they inviting the opposition to go? Can the opposition take the bait, so that we can crash into those spaces that are most successful for us? Pressing or hunting? Cheers.